Evan, welcome to the podcast.
What's up, Adam? Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you for coming on.
It's been a long time coming, I feel
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this.
Yeah.
My first question for you is, your saxophone covers like Coldplay Sparks went massively viral, earning you the title of the saxophonist who broke the internet. So, what do you think is the secret to the success of the series, adding sax solos to songs that don't need them, and specifically why this song connected?
Just going back to the beginning of the series, it was always, that's always the way that I practiced saxophone. I come from this jazz background, but I always was interested in how can I take what I'm learning here and apply it to songs that people are listening to nowadays. Not that people don't listen to jazz nowadays, but you know what I mean. And this was just always something that I did, is, trying to play something on my saxophone that fit over a Coldplay song or a Tame Impala song. Tame Impala is the one that I started the series on, like back in 2020, which is wild, so long ago. The secret to me has always been, how can I add to this in a way that is, authentic to me and what I'm naturally hearing, not think too hard about it, but I also don't want to take away from the original. So I want to kind of maintain that original spirit of, in this case, Sparks, which is this very pretty, beautiful, like almost haunting song, and add something that like complements that and tries to expand on it, but not overshadow or kind of, I never want to do too much. I want to complement, and the whole point of the series is we're adding saxophone to songs that don't need them. So this is a beautiful song on its own. I just want to kind of add that little bit of flavor, that little like jazz element that people are, that seems to resonate with people nowadays. So that's always my goal, is to kind of add something that I'm naturally hearing and that I like, but is not, so virtuosic that it's taking away from the song or people don't recognize the song that I'm playing over top of.
Yeah, great. So how did your authenticity shape that? And how can others work out how to be authentic in music and content creation?
I think, I've made hundreds of these videos at this point, and like Sparks was definitely the one that caught on the biggest in terms of just the amount of people that it reached. I think, I never, I try to always play something that sounds like me. I'm not trying to, emulate another saxophone player when I do this. And I've given myself literally hundreds of chances to go viral and to meet these people where they're at. And that's, of course, a big part of content creation and being a musician these days, is you have to continuously be creating and putting out work. So I think, the path to kind of finding your authentic voice is one of constantly putting out new things and trying new things, and just be willing to adapt and to change and to meet people where they're at. Not every video is going to go viral. Not every song is going to connect with the audience that you want it to, but the more chances you give yourself to do that, the more likely it's going to happen.
Yeah. You've mentioned in the past that you don't necessarily like volume though. So how do you find that balance?
I try to, it's a delicate balance. I think the pressures of, being online today dictate that you need to be putting out content like 5 times a week, which, for some people that's probably a good strategy. For me, and I think for a lot of other musicians, that just doesn't work, because we want to put out, a piece of high quality. And honestly, that's just not always realistic to do that 5 times a week, especially with, various other things going on. I think, you kind of have to just find a balance that works for you. I've kind of become okay with not being the creator that puts out a ton of new videos every week or a ton of new videos every month. I go through periods where I'm filming, 3 or 4 times a week, and then I go through periods where I'm not filming at all. So I've kind of just managed to be okay with that balance. And also, when I'm not shooting content, when I'm not trying to make new videos, or when I'm not trying to add saxophone solos to songs that don't need them, I'm usually all focused on something else that I'm passionate about, whether that's, writing music with my band Stolen Gin, or, putting together a new like jazz house demo for this new project that I'm working on, or, trying to send over a recording to a DJ. So, for me, it's always been about not just being a content creator, but someone who has, kind of a diverse set of musical skills and avenues that I can pursue.
Do you think the content creation takes away from the creation of the art? Because I feel like there's a lot of pushback from a lot of artists that are like, I shouldn't need to do this.
I don't think it does. I think, the actual act of content creation is just, to me, it's just like sharing your music, which is something that artists have to do anyway, but it's just in a different format. I think the actual act of like having to post all this time and having to be so active on the platforms, I think that's what the artists are turned off by, or at least that's what I sort of get frustrated by. But the actual act of just like sharing your music online via these platforms, Instagram Reels, TikTok, whatever, I think that's, that's just the way it's evolved. And like, we live, whether you like it or not, we live in this digital age, and, this is the way that people are discovering music. And honestly, there's a lot of music that goes viral, especially on TikTok, and I really love a lot of it. Like there's a lot of really, I don't think that TikTok being the medium that people use to go viral these days necessarily diminishes the quality of the music. Like
maybe just the time of the actual track, because people have.
Yeah. You think like how short it needs to be?
Yeah.
Maybe
it's turning into 2-minute songs instead of 8-minute.
That could be, but like, I don't know. I mean, there's ambient music that goes viral now. I mean, no one would have been listening to ambient music in, 2016, like kids especially. Now there's like, 19-year-old ambient music producers that are finding success through TikTok. I don't think personally that TikTok is lowering the overall quality of music that's coming out. I think in some ways it's actually inspiring people to be more creative, and maybe it's working better for some genres than others, but I think honestly it's opened up, a lot of creative possibilities for people. I think you have more people focusing on like, thinking about their branding and their overall aesthetic as an artist. And, that's important stuff. I think that, living in the social media age, it's made it more challenging, and it's made the content demands much higher, but, I don't think it's necessarily bad for music.
Yeah. Well, you've done pretty well on the media side of the music. You've got like 600,000 on your TikTok. You've got a couple 100,000 on Instagram. That's a pretty big reach. Have you found that it's had a meaningfully positive impact on your outcomes as a career musician, or is it just kind of noise and a bit of fun?
No, I mean, my goal has always been not to just be like a content creator. Obviously, it's been a great avenue. It's been a great thing for me to kind of explore and to get my music out there. But for me, it's just like one tool in the toolbox in terms of sharing my music with people. My goal has always been to like, put people onto my original music, which is something that I've started doing more recently. But I mean, it's fun and it's great, and it brings in a lot of cool opportunities to like work with new producers and DJs, and I'll get, artists and producers hitting me up for sax solos and stuff like that, which I love. But, ultimately my goal has always been, I want to be a musician first, content creator second. So I definitely don't claim to be the best content creator out there. I mean, my posting schedule, I think speaks for itself on that front. Like I don't post as regularly as probably is recommended for any type of music content creator, but that's all right. That's just been my strategy. And, my goal again has always been like, I want to put people onto, I want to direct people to my Spotify and to check out my original music that I'm putting out.
Yeah. So what tools other than content creation do you use to share music to an audience and build new audiences?
That's a good question. Honestly, I mean, content creation is definitely the biggest one. But aside from that, it's the live show. It's like getting people to come out to like a club date or, to a DJ event. That's like, to me, that's like the dessert. That's like the reward, is getting to play the live show and like getting to share this music with people in a live setting. Cause oftentimes it's like people will have just seen me through Instagram or TikTok, and then they come to the live show, and that's when it feels like real. That's when it feels like, all right, I've made a new fan or a new friend. And that is always like the best thing for me is like share, cause the TikTok and the digital side is a great introduction for people. It gets people in the door, but with attention spans being what they are these days, actually like getting those people to stick around and be a fan and be engaged and, you know, pop out to a live show, like that is what really makes it real. So TikTok is, the digital thing is sort of the introduction. And when people come to the live show, that's like, all right, now you're part of the family.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've worked as a booker in Australia for a while, and I've fallen into the trap of booking artists who have massive streams and then can't sell a couple of tickets. So how have you managed to take those potential views and turn them into actual fans? What are the strategies there?
I think cultivating your online fan base and cultivating your in-person fan base are two different things. So, you know, I think a lot of people fall victim to, you know, they go viral on TikTok, but they haven't really spent that much time honing their live show. And then when people show up to their live show and it's, you know, either pre-recorded or, you know, the live show is not that rehearsed or whatever, then I think people realize like, okay, this is not, you know, this is the live show, and the live experience clearly hasn't been thought about as much.
I feel like a lot of people don't even like get to that point. They don't even go to the show.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can only speak from the side of like my touring band, which is Stolen Gin, which is me and 4 other guys.
Have you had any viral success with that band?
A little bit. Not
Are you leading that?
No, I mean, you know, that's always a group effort. We do a lot. It's kind of the same strategy that I use on my page is like, let's get people in the door with covers. And then once they're here, then they're going to discover this whole, you know, breadth of original music that is, you know, what I think is of high quality.
And you found it actually works?
Yeah. I mean, when we go to the show, you know, I've toured the most with that band rather than my stuff. I just want to make that clear. But when we go to the shows, you know, we ask people, hey, how'd you find out about Stolen Gin? And it's usually a good mix of, oh, I found you on TikTok, or my friend went to the show and told me to come, or I went to I randomly stumbled upon your thing. But to answer your first question, I think, you know, the important thing to do is like TikTok is the digital thing is one side of the coin. I think honing the live act, being rehearsed, being good at your instrument, or at you know, at just performing in person is hugely important. And I think something that's probably a little bit undervalued in today's musical landscape. Like if you have a good live show these days, you're automatically kind of set apart from people.
Yeah. I'm noticing that as well with the DJing side of things. You really need to separate yourself because there's so much. And DJing
music is hard too, because it's like, you know, to some degree you're playing. Like I think the bar is higher in some ways, like for a DJ to like stand out, because, you know, everyone's
lower
kind of
barrier to entry.
Lower barrier to entry. And, you know, to some degree, everyone's kind of playing tracks that they may or may not have had something to do with.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, how are you going to separate yourself? Is it your track selection? Is it the way that you know, jump around on stage? Is it the way that you mix stuff together? I think it's harder to separate yourself as a DJ.
It's a combination of probably like, again, it comes down to content, like having an audience of people interested in you, having different elements, like we're talking about doing this live thing, writing your own music and then playing your own custom edits that no one else has a copy of. Like that's kind of it. And then your energy.
Yeah.
And track selection is really important. And there is a big difference between like a DJ who's not that good and a DJ who's good. And maybe you can't tell actively, but there's something different. And a lot of people do feel it.
I think today it's like, it's really interesting because I mean, DJing is, it's easy to get your foot in the door, but then, you know, after that, it's like much harder to kind of break out and separate yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't envy the world of DJs. I'm lucky in that I kind of specialize in something that's a little bit more niche.
Yeah.
And playing with DJs is like one of my absolute favorite things to do, because it's fun. People love something about hearing like a live instrument over a DJ track. It gets people going.
The hybrid
people love it. And then like, of course, like Sax House is like a huge thing, which, you know, I try not to go when I'm playing with a DJ, I try not to go like the traditional, like wailing sax over a corny house beat route. But, I just try to infuse it with my own thing. But yeah, I mean, DJing's tough. You know, it's like one of those things where everyone thinks that they can do it. And then you see like the people who are actually good at, and you're like, oh, maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's It's lucky it's not my career. It's just something fun I do on the side, right?
Yeah.
So what strategies, what are the strategy shifts between marketing edits versus marketing original music, or if any?
I think these days you kind of have to, and maybe this goes back to what you were saying before. It's like, are you like cheapening your brand in order to get people in the door and to listen to your music? I think these days you do have to kind of meet people where they're at. And like,
how do you find that out?
I just have noticed that like, if you can, as an original musician, as someone who's putting out original music, if you can give people a hook to be like, this is something that you already know, and this is how I, as an artist, am adding to it. So for example, with me, it's adding saxophone solos to songs that people already know and love. For someone who's, for an R&B singer, it might be, hey, I'm going to take Love by Keisha Cole and add my own verse. So you're giving people something that they already know and that they're really familiar with, but then you're adding your own spin on it, and you're sort of creating your brand that way. Like creating a brand almost by association. Like, this is what I do, but this is who I identify with. So like for someone who's a fan of R&B, they're going to say, oh, I love Keisha Cole. I love this song. Let's see how this person is able to like put their own spin on it and make it their own. So, I think the strategy overwhelmingly has become get people in the door with covers and edits and your versions of songs that people know and love. And then through that process, people will be introduced to your original music. And if you do that enough times, then eventually you'll build up the trust between you and your audience that they will naturally just be gravitating towards the original music that you put out, rather than having to say, oh, here's my version of a Coldplay song. Here's my version of a Beyonce song, whatever. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think in a day and age where so much content, both short form video content and music content, is being uploaded every single second, every single day, you need to give people something to latch onto, something that people know and recognize and love. Get them in the door that way, and then that's when you can kind of slowly start that process of converting them over to be a fan of your original stuff.
What do you think's next strategically on music marketing? So where are we going next, if you could guess?
Oh, man. I think that until there's a new app,
or a new media format.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think short form like shook up the game so much.
It's only been a few years.
It's really only been like 6 years since it like really
2020
took over.
really took off.
2020 is of course like when it really started popping off. Of course, TikTok was kind of a dancing app for the first like couple of years.
Because Instagram didn't even do reels until 2021 or something. Yeah, maybe after.
Yeah. I have a hard time believing that something is gonna like. I almost feel like short form media has like peaked in that way. Like, I don't see how it can get much better than it has. I almost wonder that, that's kind of why I feel like the live show is so valuable moving forward, because it's something that is becoming increasingly rare to find a good live show with people who are known for their digital presence. I think, the live music industry is very impactful and successful right now. I think, one, because people couldn't go to concerts in COVID, and then there was this huge boom of concert attendance post-COVID. And two, just because, I think people are there's not that many amazing artists who can also perform an amazing live show. Yeah. So I think really focusing on that is something that will set you apart. And I do think that like, building a fan base off of touring is definitely the slow and like arduous way of going about it, but it's definitely not like a dead art form. Like, you can definitely still grow a fan base that way. Yeah.
It's just hard to scale and expensive, but
of course, but for someone who doesn't want to like make TikToks every day and like, sink a bunch of money into like producing content, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, definitely. I did a podcast with a guy called Brendan Abernathy. It hasn't come out yet, but it will be out pretty soon, probably before this one. And his whole thing is he spent like years just touring the country, living in his car. And he was like, we're slowly getting to, and he doesn't have a big social media following, but he was like, I could probably sell 100 tickets across the country. And he's still a relatively small artist, but that's not bad. So he can tour probably 100 cities and do, maybe 100 tickets in each city.
Yeah. It's a totally different world. I mean, and being able to sell 100 tickets in every city, I mean, that's, that's really impressive, honestly. Like you said, there's people with millions of monthly listeners, hundreds of thousands of followers who can't go to a random city in the US and sell 50 tickets. I mean, yeah, it's a crazy time that we live in where there's never been such a disparity between like online attention versus, getting people to actually come to the shows.
Yeah. Well, on that note, if you were to start again from zero today, what would you do? What would be your strategy?
When I first kind of had my taste of like viral success with this series, I was so taken aback and overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that came in within like a week. And, it's pretty scary when that first happens. It's like, okay, what do I want to do? I know this is a big moment, but how do I like capitalize on this? How do I turn this into something that's, more long lasting and more meaningful?
Capture emails.
Literally. It's like, it is an insane rush of stuff that just happens in like such a short period of time.
Yeah.
I would say, when I had my first kind of viral moment, I was so eager to chase it up with something.
It's hard.
Again, I think what I would do is focus on converting people from that viral moment into real fans. So at that point, I didn't have a website. I didn't have any type of email list. I didn't have any music out on Spotify. What I would have done differently is after that first video went viral, instead of trying to go back and hit a second viral video, which is, don't get me wrong, that's important too. But I think it's much more important to say, okay, you've come in from this first video. Here's my email list. Here's how you stay connected with me. Here's how you go check me out on Spotify. I would have been much more focused on building out my presence on other platforms and creating kind of a holistic fan base rather than just like trying to chase it up with another viral moment because, it's the means to what end? You just have a lot of followers and that's cool. Don't get me wrong. But like, ultimately you want to be, at least I want to be more than a content creator. And by no means am I like an expert on this. I'm still trying to do this to this day. And like the website thing and putting stuff out on Spotify and like releasing my own music. These are very recent developments. This took me like years to figure out, where I was just trying to chase the next viral moment, chase the next viral video, the next clip. And, I would see the following go up, but, again, like to what end, ultimately my goal is to be a musician and someone who shares original music with people. And, I was just kind of getting stuck in this loop of what's the next viral video, And, I think it's important these days to kind of like convert people over to the thing that you really care about. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, a little bit. So how would you do that?
So I recently, just to use Sparks as an example, I struck gold to some degree with this Sparks moment with Coldplay, where I had this sax solo that a bunch of people were using the audio of it. And I, pretty quickly I was like, all right, need to get this out, put out the full version with that I made with a producer. I moved on it very, very quickly.
I think that's the important part. When you do hit, you need to move on to like keep pushing.
And it can be very like paralyzing almost. Like, I mean, I'd been doing this for years before I like finally it dawned on me. I was like, oh, I should probably be putting these out and like try to make this more of a official thing. But yeah, it is about moving quickly. And in that case, it's like, okay, I'm having this thing on TikTok. It's great. Super happy with it. But I want to make these people fans. I want to introduce them to my new music. So I put out Sparks. And then very shortly after that, I followed it up with my first single for my like new sort of like jazz house music project that I'm doing, with my friend Will from Stolen Gin. So very quickly after that, just followed up with my debut, like original single, which was, really fun and successful. And, it wasn't as successful as the Sparks cover, but it was still like a great way to take these people who had come in from Sparks and be like, hey, this is my original music. This is something that I'm really passionate about and care about. And, that's how I kind of positioned it on social media. And, now I'm kind of gotten to the place where I'm like more comfortable with like promoting my own original music rather than just covers. you know, like I'm trying to bridge that gap between, you know, getting people in the door with covers and now just getting them put onto my original stuff.
You mentioned that it took some time for you to be able to promote your original music. Was that a imposter syndrome situation?
I honestly, I recently learned what this term is, and I think it definitely, yeah, no doubt. Where you're like, you know, I don't know if people
fraud
like this. Like, this is just a fluke.
Yeah.
And then it happened like 5 more times, and I'm like, I still just got lucky. Like, it's not real. I definitely think there's an element of that. And obviously, you know, part of that is just like a personal thing, but it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And yeah, I think totally. You know, if I could go back to that first viral moment, I would have just said, you know, fucking release anything. Like put anything out. It doesn't need to be good. Like again, going back to what I was saying earlier, like there's such an obsession, especially with music in today's digital age where everything needs to be perfect. It's like there's such a pressure to make sure that that the music that you're putting out is like perfect and like good by your standards. And if I could just go back, you know, I would just put something out, you know, that you're not going to get, if I could speak to my 20-year-old self, I would say, you're not going to get better at this if you don't like just put something out. Something that resonated with me, I forget who said it, but it was like strive for progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
I think I would definitely like try to lead with that mentality more if I could go back and tell my old self to do so.
Let's talk about the content creation and music mental checklist. So run me through how you approach the idea validation, the differences on the platforms, repeatability, to hopefully be able to build a good framework.
Do you mean like, you know, kind of establishing your brand on socials?
Potentially, yeah. Or just so, you know, if say I'm struggling to find my niche, what are some tools and frameworks of thinking to make good series and good pieces of content music related?
I think people try to be too broad generally. I think, you know, the most effective thing that you can do is create consistency over a long period of time across various pieces of content. So for me, it's this series that I've repeated for 50 plus installments, adding saxophone solos to songs that don't need them. For other people, for other creators, it's how are you creating a consistent, either visual or like oral like identity with your videos. So that can mean you're entering the camera in the same way every video. You have the same type of text on screen at the beginning of every video. You're in the same location. You're using a similar like color grading with all your videos. So I think it's creating a consistent sort of image across multiple pieces of content. And when it comes to music, like that could be something, there's this one band that I really love called La Lome, and they blew up online. They're great musicians in their own right, but a big key to their success is they continued using like the same color grading in all of their videos, so that the second that someone scrolled onto one of their videos, you're like, all right, this is a La Lome video. And so I think anyone who's trying to establish that brand, establish that presence online can take some notes from that and just be like, you know, what is my visual hook? What is my, oral hook? You know, am I going to start every video the same way? Am I going to start every video with the same catchphrase or with the same sort of like visual cliche or something? For me, it was like at the beginning of the series, I kind of had like, you know, I was in the same room. I had like this little point to this text on screen. So the second that everyone went to my video, it was like, all right, this is the same guy that's been doing the sax solos. So I think that's a big thing, is like in this day and age where everyone's like starved for attention and attention spans are so short, you need to have some sort of cue at the beginning of all your pieces of content that signals to your viewers, this is the same person as it was the last time you watched one of these videos, and you know what you're going to get immediately. I think when people get caught up is when they try to do too many different styles of content, and people end up having no idea like what the brand is or what the focus of that individual page is, because it's a fashion page and it's a music page and it's a lifestyle page and it's a story time page. You know, you can do all of those things, but you need to have one through line. So whether it's you start the videos the same way, the videos all look the same, some sort of cue for people to be like, all right, that is this particular creator, and it needs to be like right at the beginning of the video.
Yeah, that's a good point. Niching down seems to be the constant factor with everyone I speak to.
That was a very long-winded way of saying.
That was a great answer.
Be consistent and make it obvious to people.
Yeah.
Focus on one thing, and when something works, do it again.
Yeah.
I cannot stress that enough. People think that their followers are going to get tired of something, and me, myself included. Like when I've been in the process of like promoting a song, I'm like, oh Jesus, like I have to post this song again. Like my followers are going to fucking hate me. They're going to be so annoyed at this. But truly, like every time you post that video, it's important. You know, you need to get the messaging out to people as much as possible.
Yeah. I've noticed the niche is a very, very important thing, and sub niching, you know, a niche within a niche is also really, really useful. Personally, I've struggled to find that ability to find my niche due to the wide interests that I have. And the only pieces of content that have gone viral was me explaining how to get out of a parking fine. I'm like, I don't really know what to do with this. So,
yeah, I mean,
I don't want to go down the life hack parking fine business, and then a DJ, and then a recent DJ set went viral. I'm like, I don't even want to be a DJ. What the fuck do I do with this?
So, I mean, if I were to take my own advice here, and maybe this is, you know, this is just off the dome here, but like how to get out of a parking fine, and then it's like you transition into like playing a DJ set for the fucking traffic cop or whatever.
God.
It's like, see, I also do this.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
I think you need to be a little bit shameless with it though.
Yeah.
And that's something that I struggle with just because I'm like very self-conscious of like, oh God, I just posted this like 2 days ago. People are going to get so tired of this.
Yeah.
And you know, a 30-second clip 2 days apart, as someone who's posting about it, you're like, oh God, this is a lot. Like, are people going to get fatigued of this? But the truth is, with the amount of content that people are consuming these days, it's like,
I don't even think about it.
No, they don't care.
Yeah. It makes a good point. I'm thinking of a few past podcast guests we've had, like Jordan Tuwali has this thing. He's a travel content creator. And his whole thing is like, what the heck? Every video he starts off with.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, you know, that's a perfect example. It's like that vocal like cue almost. It's like his signature. And it's like, it doesn't even have anything to do with his content. You know, he's a travel content creator. Like what the heck has nothing to do with check out my trip to Bali. But like that is the way that you kind of have to, it's like your theme song almost. Yeah. It's like you hear it or you're like, all right, I'm watching this show now.
Yeah. And same with, I'm thinking now Ari Alkins, he has that blue chair.
Yes, exactly. Same thing. Deal. Same blue chair every time, same framing. He like sits down in the thing and he's like, yeah. So you're onto something there. It's worth really thinking, I got to just find an apartment where I just don't want to leave so I can settle in. That's tough. And again, it's like as someone who's like trying to do this consistently, it's like, God, I'm getting bored. These people must be getting bored too. And usually that's not the case, but.
What happens when you have failed at a piece? Well, listen, I don't know, fail is a rough word, but a piece of content or a gig or something hasn't worked out. How do you dissect it and then improve? What are you thinking?
Everyone has related to that experience of like spending hours or even days on a video, and then it gets like a couple
shadow
hundred
banned
views.
by TikTok.
Also, by the way, a lot of people claim shadow banned, and I'm like, I don't think you're shadow banned. I just don't think. Maybe that's mean, but bad. Yeah, low key. Yeah, I mean, you have to be willing to make a fool of yourself. This is a total hard left, but Taylor Swift was our commencement speaker for graduation. And the one thing that she said, she actually had a great speech. But one of the things that she said that I thought was like really impactful is like, she's like, I know everybody thinks I'm cringe. Not everybody. She has a huge fan base. She's the biggest pop star ever. Fan base. But
billionaire off of music.
Yeah. She, you know, obviously everyone doesn't think she's cringe, but over her however many years she's been putting out music, 15 years, 20 years, there's been, you know, immense criticism for her work. Yeah, plenty of people calling her, you know, a hack or a failure. Oh, you're just writing songs about your ex-boyfriend. The biggest accusation that she's gotten is, oh, I'm being cringe. And I think a lot of people feel like they're being cringe when they put out some content that doesn't do well.
Yeah.
And I think the thing what she said is the thing that's been able to help her is like, people think that it's like cool not to try at anything. But like, that's really not the case. Like if your fear of being cringe is like stopping you from pursuing something that you love. And, you know, keep in mind, she phrased that much more eloquently than I did, but that's all to say, like, if content creation is something that you're interested in pursuing, you kind of have to be willing to put out a video that flops and then just follow it up with something better. Like I've gone through month-long periods where nothing I'm doing is really hitting. And, that's part of the journey. Not everything is gonna be a hit. And I think if content creation and sharing your stuff online is something that is important to you and is something that you're interested in, like you kind of have to accept that is the reality of the situation. Not everything is going to go viral. These things come in waves. Like I explained earlier, like the first time I went viral, I got hit with so many emails, brand opportunities, this, that, the other. I was like, oh, this is great. This is just going to be like my life now. And then of course, 3-4 weeks later, it's like, all right, where's all the emails? Like I thought we were about to be set for life. So, periods of great viral success come in waves, and periods of viral nothingness and barrenness also comes in waves. And, if this is, the life that you choose, I think you have to just be prepared for that and willing to take those failures on the chin.
Have you changed your content and the way you've worked when you go through those periods of nothing happening, or are you just sticking to the course?
I have, in a period of like nothing really working, I've definitely been like, all right, it's time to switch. And then I switch, and then it's like, I still don't really find it. And then when I go back to my original plan, it always gets better. So I honestly feel like if you're lucky enough for people to know you for doing one thing, you more often than not, that thing is going to be like your thing. That should be like your guiding light. That's the North Star of like, this has worked before. This is what people have resonated with when I've posted it. That's going to be what I always return to. So
Does that not keep you in a box though?
A little bit. I think
career?
I definitely don't want to sound like I'm advocating for not changing your content. I think the way that you have to do it is be subtle about it and continue with that through line, but just divert it a little bit to one way or the other. So for me, I'm posting videos of adding sax solos to songs that don't need them. I'm in the same room every time. I'm doing kind of the same point. It's a similar framing. But now let's say I want to, promote my new song that I'm just, that I'm preparing to release in a couple of weeks. Now I'm going to use the same format, same lighting, same room, same text or whatever, but the music is going to be different. And now it's like the video is being presented in the same way and in the same format, but the actual content and the goal of the content has changed. So I think whenever you as a content creator are trying to shift your strategy, you have to maintain a little bit of that through line and that brand consistency, while also being subtly, you're moving the content in a different direction. So you can say to your followers and your fans, hey, come along, I'm still staying loyal and true to what my brand is and the reason that you follow me in the first place, but I'm going to take you on this journey that's a little bit off course. So, I definitely am a big proponent of, as you change your content, change the way that you share with people. But with that in mind, it's important to like be cognizant of the reason that people follow you in the first place. Don't take a hard left. If you're going to change course and if you're going to like change the style of your content, do it in a way that is mindful for the reason that people follow you in the first place. So, and if you're throwing something completely expected to people, maybe this works for other people, but it hasn't worked for me. I always think it's a better recipe for success. If you're going to change course, you need some of the elements of your old content to kind of be incorporated into whatever it is that you're doing that's new.
Yeah, makes sense. Nice. So conscious of time and wrapping up a little bit, I'd like to just get some general philosophical thoughts about you and how you view the world. So what's the biggest thing over the last 2 years you've changed your mind on?
I think that preserving people's like view of you and how you think that you're viewed is, I think I used to think that was more important than honesty and being honest. I think more recently I've suffered for trying to be the version of myself that people would like the most, or that would just offend the least amount of people. Not that I'm, a particularly offensive guy, but I definitely am like, I'm a people pleaser by nature.
Yeah.
And I think I've learned that potentially like putting people off or rubbing people the wrong way can almost be worth it if you're being honest and speaking your mind. And, I think if you speak your mind to someone and they don't value you the same way, then it's probably not someone that you wanted in your circle in the first place. Yeah,
I think truth is the most important goal to get to across everything that you're doing, just getting to the core truth of what's going on.
I think, my primary goal for a lot of my life had been like, I just want to appeal to as many people as possible.
Is that an insecurity thing?
I think so. And I think honestly that, I don't think that, being a content creator and being someone who's constantly putting themselves out there on the internet for people to judge, I mean, it certainly hasn't made that easier.
Well, I mean, you've managed to find some validations.
Yeah, but it's like that validation is it's like
fleeting.
It's like junk food. Like it feels good in the moment, but you're like, oh man, this is
I feel sick.
Yeah. And then when it's like, all right, now, and then your next, it's like when your video is getting 1 million views and then your next video is getting like 1,000. It's like, oh shit.
All mine just get 1,000.
Dude, it's like, again, it comes in waves and I feel like you just kind of, just have to fucking keep paddling, keep swimming through those waves.
Yeah.
But just being honest is more important than trying to be the version of yourself that you think people are going to want.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think as I'm getting older, the tactfulness of honesty is important. Like being tactful and tasteful about how you convey that honesty is useful, but getting to that truth is really, really, really important.
Yeah,
for sure. So what's an act that somebody has done for you, a kind act that somebody has done that maybe wasn't a big deal for them, but had a huge impact on your life?
I would say I have a couple friends who like, they don't even realize it, but just, I think in New York, everyone is like super busy all the time. And people are like, there's almost this like collective insecurity about like wanting to be vulnerable and like opening up to people and like asking people to like spend time with them. I love when a random friend who I haven't spoken to in a while just like hits me up to hang out, go get a drink or a bite or something. And that honestly like means so much to me whenever I have a friend that like does that. And especially if it's someone who I haven't seen in a while who might, who I might be like, oh, I don't know if I really want to like hit them up. They might not be interested or around or something, but I've just gained such an appreciation for people who are like, oh, let's link up. Like you never know how much that's going to mean to someone. And that always like touches my heart when I have a friend who I haven't spoken to in a while that reaches out.
Yeah. How has that act of kindness impacted the way you navigate the world?
I think it's just allowed me to be more open and honest with people, especially people who I love and care about. There's never going to be, I'm always worried, or I have been worried in the past that, my act, me reaching out is not going to be received in the way that I want it to be.
Yeah.
And, I just think, if it impacts me in such a positive way, then why wouldn't me reaching out and being that open, honest version of myself also like mean the same amount to them too?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. What's the most beautiful thing you've created?
I think
Sparks remix.
I think, I do think Sparks is beautiful in its own right, but I think Coldplay created that more than I did. I added a little part to it, which people seem to like, but I can't say that's been my. Honestly, I think it's all about, I think, relationships for me. I think the relationship that I've built with my band has been something that has taught me so much. So many lessons about honesty and hard work and working together through times of tension and struggle. And like we have had, small personal differences and, just various struggles of, being in a tiny tight van together for weeks at a time.
Yeah,
and then we go out and we create this beautiful music together. I think the most beautiful thing that I've been lucky enough to create is like the relationships in my life, whether it's with my band or with my family or my girlfriend. That's just something that I'm constantly working on.
Yeah, nice. So if you could gift only one book to people for the rest of your life, what would that book be?
The 4 Agreements is really good.
It's a great book.
I've only read it once, but I've been meaning to go back to it because it's so good.
Yeah, I remember reading that after Tash Sultana put it on her story years ago.
Tash Sultana. Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah, she's cool. Be impeccable with your words. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best.
Yeah.
The 4 agreements.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since I've read it, but it really impacted me when I did. And yeah, it's just a beautiful way of looking at life.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of those books as well, you read them once, you have one pass at it, it does something to you, and then you forget. And then a few years later, you're like, oh, I probably should reread this. And then something else comes up and then you reread. I think I'm getting to a point where I've like probably read, I'm not a massively fast reader, but I like to have some form of audiobook or book in my life. And there's a few books that I read at the start of my reading journey when I was 18, 19 that I think are well overdue to be read again.
Yeah, I reading it's tough. It's something that I used to do, and I feel like, I do feel like going through school kind of put a dent on my relationship with reading. And now
because you're reading for specific circumstances.
And I'm really trying to get back to it. I just, there's so much pleasure and joy in it that I feel like I lost, and that I'm trying to kind of like reconnect with my like childhood relationship with it.
Nice. Yeah, how are you doing that? Just getting into it?
Just like actively seeking out books by people that I admire. Yeah. Like Anthony Bourdain is the one that I mentioned earlier. You kind of, I sort of created this association in my mind through like high school and college that reading was something that was not fun. And, I just coming to the realization that there were books by people who I really like value their insight on the world is like a totally just changed my perspective on it. And I was like, oh, like I really need to kind of, it's just a different way of like interfacing with people whose opinions that you respect and value.
Yeah. There's a quote that I think about in that space that was said, read for enjoyment until you enjoy reading. So basically just find things you really enjoy reading, whatever it may be. It doesn't matter what it is, but until you get to the point where you just begin to really enjoy the specific act of reading, and then you'll begin to be able to read harder, more challenging pieces of writing.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm there yet, honestly. We're working on it. It's a slow grind.
Just keep reading what you enjoy until that point. And I also find it fascinating that a vast majority of really successful people in whatever domains they do are all big readers, and you can take someone's whole life experience, someone who you might charge $1 million an hour to talk to if you wanted to get them into a room, has spent years thinking about and then dissecting ideas and putting them down on paper, and you can buy that thing for $20. That's kind of crazy.
Insane. I do think it goes back to like, if you're trying to put something out into the world, whether it's a piece of art or a piece of writing or a piece of, I don't know, any type of product out into the world, I think you need to have a certain degree of like life experience. And I think that can like honestly be gotten through learning about other people's life experiences. And that is also, a version of their truth that can be incorporated into whatever you're doing. So, I think the more life experience that you have and the more life experience that you can like almost like absorb through reading other people's life experiences, hopefully the more truth will be reflected in whatever it is that you're producing.
Yeah, definitely. So wrapping up, is there anything you're excited about at the moment that you want to let the listeners in on?
Yeah. There's a few things. I don't think this is probably not going to come out before GovBall, but we have GovBall on June 6th, which I'm super excited for. That's with my band Stolen Gin. Mm-hmm. And then looking a little bit ahead, we have a festival in July 4th in Missoula, Montana, where Casey Musgraves and Hosier are going to be headlining, which is going to be sick. And then I am... I've recently launched my like Stolen Gin side project, which is called Evan plus Will, that I'm doing with my friend Will. It's like a jazz house, like Berlioz type thing with a little bit more of like a modern Daft Punky production twist. So we're putting out our new song beginning of June. So I'm really excited for that. And yeah, just lots of new music, lots of shows. That's what I love to do, and that's what I think I'm best at.
Nice. And what's one lesson that you hope that everyone can take away from the conversation?
That it is not people respond much more to something that is emotionally charged than something that is impressive, like technically impressive. So, I always, think about music in this way. I am much more drawn to someone playing something very, very simple, but in a very emotional way than I am to something very complex that is played like really quickly and really, virtuosically, but without emotion. And I think people learn music and they learn whatever their trade is in the opposite way of that. So they're much more focused on getting the virtuosic thing down than they are about getting the emotional thing down. And I think for the vast majority of people, whether you're a music fan or not, whether you're a big writing, a writer or not, people respond much more to something that is emotionally charged and raw than something that is super technical and refined. And I think that's a good approach to art. And I think that's a good approach to life too.
Yeah. I think about the conversation that Rick Rubin had around Johnny Cash producing Hurt. Do you know about this?
I've heard this story.
Yeah. And it's just fascinating. They were just struggling to find the soul in the album. And then they got to this point where it's just him and a guitar. And it was like, Hurt is like one of the craziest songs ever.
It's beautiful.
It's insane.
I think Rick Rubin is a good example of that. I've seen plenty of interviews with him. I've seen lots of interview clips of him talking, and his approach is so rooted in like, let's kind of throw out, let's just trust our intuition here. Let's trust the fact that we've done our training, we've done our homework, we've done our due diligence, and let's just kind of make this art on pure raw emotion. And I love that.
Yeah, definitely, man. So where can people find you if they're interested?
You can just Google my name, Evan Jacobson, on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, all that.
Yeah, cool, man. And last one for you is, what do you think the meaning of life is?
Just love each other, be honest. I think that there is no deep meaning to life. And I think that's what gives life its meaning. It's just, it is what it is. So just connect with people where you can, be honest, and lead with that, and you'll have a happy life, hopefully.
Cool, man. Thanks, Evan.
Thanks so much, Adam. Appreciate it.
Coming on.
Yeah,
cool.
man.
All right. And if you've made it this far, please jump onto YouTube, search That One Time with Adam Metwally, click subscribe, like the video, and leave us a comment.